Welcome to Not Your Ordinary Parts, a podcast where we talk about hard things associated with the human experience with the goal of increasing awareness, growth, and healing. You may hear information from professionally licensed therapists, life coaches, healers, doctors, etc. This information is not medical advice or therapy and is not meant to replace actual therapy or instructions given by a doctor or a personal therapist. I'm your host, Jalon Johnson. My guest today is Janie Rhone. Janie is a psychotherapist and a transformative force in the realm of healing and human connection who embodies a rare blend of compassion, expertise, and vision. Her work is grounded in a deep understanding of the human experience, the power of restorative care, and an unwavering commitment to uplifting individuals, communities, and the collective well being. She has become known for creating spaces where people can reclaim their fullest potential and for integrating mind, body, and spirit in ways that make healing feel possible and personal. Janie serves with a level of presence that extends far beyond the therapy room. She has guided countless individuals through profound transformation, offering steadiness as they navigate trauma, embrace vulnerability, and rediscover their own strength. Her legacy is one of deep impact, rippling outward into families and communities, and her dedication to amplifying marginalized voices and to guiding people home to themselves is a testament to the boundless capacity of human compassion. It reminds us that healing isn't just possible, it's contagious, and it touches the world one heart at a time. So, Miss Janie, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being my guest.
Thank you so much for having me.
I gave a brief introduction, but so that the audience can get to know you a little bit better, would you mind giving us a little bit of background about yourself and how you got to who and where you are today, please?
Wow, that's a long story. I did not dream or walk into this new life, I'd like to call it. It found me. I worked in corporate America for 45 years before I got to do what I'm doing now. I worked for the communication industry. I worked for Southern Bell, Bell South, and AT&T. And about 6 years ago, I retired. Um, and tried to figure out what my next step would be. All along, I had been furthering my education. You know, you work for a company and they offer to pay tuition for you to go to school, then one should take advantage of that. And I did. I got my undergrad degree from Barry University in human resources, and I got a master's degree in business and later got a master's degree in psychology from Nova Southeastern University. And as of the end of September, I completed my doctoral degree from Liberty University. My degree is in community care, counseling, and traumatology.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
How long have you been a therapist? And are there any new developments in your practice or your career?
I've been in private practice for about 10 or 11 years. And when you say new developments, yes, I am learning. I am a lifelong learner. I am committed to learning what it's going to take um, to help individuals become their authentic self, which is the
Mm.
foundation that I stand on. That's my goal. I think that's my mission is to help people to heal and help the hurting, so to speak.
It's a great mission. Um, And with that mission, you've developed a way of assisting that's very intentional. And I feel like it's rooted in lived experience. In your practice today, what would you say is the core of your work and the center of your healing?
The core of my work is getting people to see who they are as individuals. A lot of times life throws you curveballs and a lot of us lose our identity. We lose who we are. I ask clients often, who are you? And a lot of times the answer is, I don't know. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad place to start. Because if you don't know who you are, then you become who society and others says that you are. So helping individuals to determine what it is they want, or if you don't know who you are, who would you like to become, is the goal.
Mm. I think asking an adult, someone who has been on this earth maybe 30 or 40 years, who they are and getting the answer back that they don't know, how does that sit with you?
Knowing what I know, it sits fine with me. So many of us live a false life, for lack of a better word. We move and do what we do as if we're on stage, as if we're actors, in a play. And we do that so much until we lose the ability to determine what's real and what's not. So for you to say, I don't know, that's not a bad thing. You're probably one of the few times that you've been really brutally honest and told the truth. You don't know. So at that rate, that's where we start. That's a good place to start. Who do you want to become? In order for you to move forward and to heal, something has got to change. You've got to let go of that narrative that you've been spinning, forever, and come up with a new narrative. Who do you want to be? Tell the truth for once.
Mm. That gave me goosebumps. I think as an adult and someone who started therapy late in life, that question hit me hard as well. And I didn't know. And as the client, I think it feels almost it puts you in a place of disempowerment because you've done all these things, you have all these accomplishments, you have a job, you have a house. I mean, you've lived a life that society tells you essentially you're successful, and then you sit in front of someone and they ask you who are you and you can't answer that. It's hard. It's
It
really hard.
it that can be like cold water in your face.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, and I hear you say, society says, and you've lived this life and you've done all these things. What do you believe? What do you think? Yes, you've done all those things. Yes, you've lived this phenomenal life on this level. And I see a lot of clients and they're empty. There's no joy. There's no peace. It's almost like that, fight or flight response. And you're forever, flighting, or fighting. You're never comfortable with who you are as an individual. So is that life, or is that, or is it a game? What is that? And when do you get to the point to where you stop telling yourself that and you begin to be honest with who you are and accept you for where you are?
Mm. This what's your hourly rate? We might have to charge for this episode. I appreciate your nuggets so much. You said that as a therapist, you see yourself as a guardrail. Can you explain what that looks like from the perspective of the client who's doing the heavy lifting?
I come into a session with the belief that you are the expert in the room. Once I can get you to tell me what it is you want and what that looks like, I simply keep you from flying off the road. You're the driver. I'm the guardrail. I keep you from hurting yourself. As a therapist, I challenge your thinking. Okay. If you say to me, Miss Janie, I have this heartfelt desire, and this is simplistic, but you'll get my meaning. I want to go to Disney World. That's just I've dreamt that forever. This is what I want to do. And we go downstairs from my office and you get in the car and we start to head south. Ever since Disney World has been Disney World, it's north. It's always been north. Hasn't changed, isn't likely going to change, and not going to move. So you need to help me understand, how can you reach the destination? How can you get to where you want to go if you're going in the wrong direction? So I simply challenge you, as simplistic as that may sound, I challenge your thinking, and I help you to think of the barriers. I help you to think of things that may disrupt you, and get some, get clarity on that to ensure that you reach your destination, that you get to where you want to go.
Mm. That can be hard for someone who is stepping into the realm and world of therapy for the first time and looking for guidance instead of someone saying to them, "You're the expert. I'm just here to make sure you do what you want to do," especially if they don't know who they are or what they want to do. So, how do you help your clients to get past that first hurdle of feeling like maybe therapy is too hard?
First of all, I start from a place of no blame, no shame, no guilt tripping, no gaslighting, none of that. You've probably done enough of that to yourself already. So starting from the basics, starting to talk about your feelings and what do you want? At the end of the day, what do you want and what does that look like? If we can define that, then that kind of gives us a, kind of a template, if you will, to roll with. But we've got to start somewhere. And sometimes starting, which can be the hardest part, is just healing some old wounds, letting go of bad narratives, letting go of traditions and all of that. Not finding yourself again, finding who you are or who you want to be, and becoming sitting with that. As I like to say, sit with that. We'll sit with that for a bit, and then we'll move forward.
If someone has never felt their feelings and now they're gently given the invitation to do that and sit with them, what can that feel like? It can it be like a dam bursting and all the water is rushing in, and do you sometimes have to, be the ambulance running to help the clients?
Absolutely. That can be frightening if you've never done that before. If you have never, for lack of a better word, felt your feelings, that can be scary. But I think my ability to listen and be compassionate is my greatest asset, because I help people to feel comfortable in my setting. I say to people right off, if we're talking about these kinds of things, you're not crazy. We make the assumption, society sometimes makes the assumption that when people go to therapy, it's because you're crazy, and it's not. You're complex, and we're all different, and we all see things differently. And what makes us complex is the fact that we've had different experiences. We've had different things happen to us. We've learned differently. We've all been in different environments. And all of that makes a difference in how you see things. So, not feeling your feelings could have been what you did to survive, which was my case. No, there's no room for vulnerability. I needed to survive. I needed to stay alive. So, yes, those feelings can be frightening. They can be scary, but we do some hand holding and some coaching and some babysitting, if you will, to just help individuals become comfortable with that, become comfortable with your feelings. They're just feelings. They can be impactful, but they're just feelings.
Mm, that's profound. Um, there was something you said I wanted to circle back to, but I can't remember it now. So if I do remember, we'll come back. But something that you're very, very passionate about and speak often of is validation. What is validation? Where can a need for validation stem from? And how can that need influence behaviors?
Validation is acceptance.
Mm,
It's wanting or needing someone to approve of you as an individual, as a human being, as a person. That can come in from any number of places. When we don't get that, we tend to be people pleasers, for lack of a better word. We want everybody to play nice in the sandbox. And if we tend to just kind of walk to everybody else's drumbeat instead of our own. Individuals, human beings, go to great limits to be liked, to be heard, to be appreciated, to be thought well of. And when that's to an extreme, when you don't know who you are, you don't know your value, you don't know your self-worth, that can get to be, extreme. And you end up doing a lot of things that you don't necessarily want to do, but you feel like you're obligated to do, to feel good about yourself or to keep peace, so to speak.
So let's say someone becomes a people pleaser early on in life, childhood, for instance, because they haven't had an opportunity to be seen or heard. What can their adult behaviors look like as a result of the need for validation?
It can look like settling. It could look like people pleasing on a higher level. It can look like saying yes to everything, to everyone, out of fear of I'm not going to be liked. I might get in trouble, or I might not be accepted. I might not fit in. You tend to, if you don't get that, or that's not contained in some way, it doesn't go away when you get to be an adult. If you don't learn how to set boundaries, if you don't know your identity, know who you are as a person, if you don't have a voice, you can't advocate for yourself, you can't speak up, you can't say yes when you mean yes and no when you mean no, you tend to live a life where you're just tossed literally to and fro.
Um, so let's say someone is looking for this validation and they're not getting it in a healthy way and they turn to the internet. How can social media give, I guess, what we can call a false sense of validation, and how harmful can that be?
That has a tendency to be very, very harmful. Certainly with our, with our young people, because everybody is looking at everybody else and everybody wants to be like everybody else and have what everybody else has. And that can, that can get out of hand. And, let's face it, we all want to be accepted. We all want to be liked. We all want to be included. Nobody wants to be a fifth wheel. So to say that that doesn't matter, I think that's a false statement, because it does matter. But when it's extreme, you tend to, want to fall in line just like everybody else. You do things for the sake of being seen, of being accepted, of having a voice, of, not being invisible. And that can get out of hand. And social media doesn't help. When we compare ourselves to the whoever's on social media, it can, it can get out of hand. And all of us have a tendency to do it. All of us have a tendency to do it.
I remember what it was I wanted to say, because you talked about people going to therapy and thinking that they're crazy. And I remember hearing somebody say that most times the people that go to therapy aren't crazy, but are going because they're dealing with people who need to go that are driving them crazy.
That that does ring true. That does ring true. And the fact that a lot of the naysayers that talk about, going to therapy and stigmatizing and stereotyping people that do, there's been some studies done, and some of those people are in need of therapy themselves, but don't have the courage, don't have the wherewithal to go. So they kind of, lash out or, throw shade, if you will, on
Mm,
individuals that are going.
if you will.
Yes,
Something else that I heard from someone who was very, very knowledgeable is that feelings aren't facts.
it's true.
What can happen when we allow ourselves to be guided by feelings and we debate or argue feelings instead of facts?
You tend to lose your sense of a reality when you do that. If I say to you, what you just said hurt my feelings, and you say to me, no, it didn't, and you want to argue that's a problem. My feelings are my feelings. I'm allowed to have them. Your feelings are your feelings. If I say to you at any point in time, I feel, I'm right because I know what I feel. You might not agree with it, and that's okay. But as a rule, if we're going to argue, let's argue facts. Let's argue hard, cold facts. You can't argue my feelings. I can't argue your feelings. If you hurt my feelings, and I say to you, you hurt what you just said or did hurt my feelings. Here's what you can offer me. I'm sorry. That was not my intent. Help me understand what I did or what I said so that I don't make that mistake again. That's all you can offer me. You can't argue that you didn't hurt me and I said that you did. So as a rule, let's stick to the facts. When we throw the feelings in there, that kind of clouds everything.
Mm, it's so true. And I'm so glad that I asked you that question because I wanted to give you the opportunity to, I guess, dive into that a bit because I think a good majority of us are out here looking through a lens of feelings instead of actual factual realities. And when our reality is our feelings, we're not we're not within those bounds of the guardrail, so to speak. And so we need someone to step in and challenge our thinking.
Absolutely. I think it's important that we often say that your feelings are that's your reality, but is it? Is it really? I mean, that may be the way you see it, but is that true? Look at the facts. What empirical data do you have that says that this is the case? Or do you just feel that way? And you're allowed to feel. I'm not implying that your feelings are not important. Okay. But you've got to separate your feelings from the facts.
Mm, spot on. Um, okay, so before we move on, I want to give the audience an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. And I think it's safe to say that you've lived a life that many would have not known how to manage or survive. Growing up in a family bearing the scars of generations of struggle and having to carry things that you should never had to do. What was that like for you?
Now, when I look back, it was very difficult. I don't know how I made it. I have no real concept of how I made it. I can't sit here and tell you that I knew this or I did this or I did that. I survived under some very difficult circumstances. Um, my mother, now that I do what I do, I can put a name to it. My mother was developmentally delayed. Um, my mom, she was not responsible for rearing me. I was raised by my grandparents. My mom was there, but my grandmother was the head honcho. She said yay or nay, and what was, and that was what it was. Um, my mom loved me, and I knew she did, but she did not have the capacity to nurture me as I would have wanted to be nurtured, or as I think as I needed. She, at the end of the day, she gave me what she could, and I was much older and an adult before I could say that. My mom lived to be 90 years old, and I never heard my mom utter the words, "I love you." Never in my whole life. And that used to bother me a lot. But then I had to realize you can't teach what you don't know. If you didn't grow up in an environment where that was the norm, or that was, that's what was done, or that's what, that's what you were exposed to, then how can you possibly know how to do that? Different with my children now, that just rolls off my tongue. We never hang up from a call without saying, okay, I love you. So I've been able to break that barrier, that tradition. But my mom gave me what she could. She was not educated. She couldn't read and write. She did manual and menial labor all my life. Um, I don't ever recall her, having a skill, if you will. She worked on farms, she picked beans and, greens, potatoes, and whatever other vegetables were growing in the season. And that was how we survived. But I knew that she loved me. I knew that she cared for me. But, as a child, I wanted the mom that could, go to PTA meetings and bake cookies and, I can have friends over and that sort of thing, simply because that was what I saw with some of my other friends. But my mom did not have the capacity to do that. She didn't. And it took me a long time to learn and be okay with the fact that she did what she could. She said to me, I want you to go to school. I want you to get your lesson. And I want you to do what the teacher tells you to do. My mom could not read and write, and that's what she told me. That was all she told me. And that alone helped propel me to where I am now. I didn't, this is not a Jedi mind trick. I didn't get here by magic, but just she gave me what she could at that time. And obviously that was what I needed. I thought I needed a whole lot more, but I was able to move forward with what she gave me. And now, as I look back and I certainly am a little bit more mature, I can appreciate that. But I was bothered by that when I was, when I was much younger, by just what we talked about. I wanted to be like everybody else. I wanted to be, the little girl whose mom could do all these phenomenal things and whose mom could speak well and whose mom could drive and take her places and all of that. My mom didn't have the capacity to be able to do those things. And it's okay. Now I know that what she gave me, what she had, and what she gave me was what she gave me. And I'm okay with that.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I know that that can be a very sore and difficult subject for a lot of people because love is your birthright,
Mhm.
and nurturance is never really a guarantee. And I think when we don't get what we feel like we should have gotten, we may tend to harbor resentment or to hold grudges or to feel slighted.
Mhm.
And there was something you said, you wanted your mom to do all these wonderful things, but that was because you saw maybe other kids getting those things and you felt like they were wonderful. But
Exactly.
I I would bet anything that maybe those kids' parents couldn't do all the wonderful things that your mom had to do to survive.
Mhm.
And so when you look at it from that lens, you can really appreciate the bridge that they built for us to get where we were, because her telling you go to school, get your lesson, listen to the teacher, she didn't have that.
Sure.
But she afforded that for you, and now you've been able to accomplish so much, and you've given your children all the things that they needed because you had the capacity to do it. But like you said, you can't teach what you don't know. And if you don't have the tools to do something, you're not equipped for it.
Sure, absolutely. And a lot of us, a lot of adults, a lot of people that I see in my practice, they're angry.
Mhm.
They're 30, 40, 50 years old, and you're still mad at your mom or mad at your dad, and he or she should have done this and they should have done that. At what point in time, and I never use these words in my practice. I never use the word get over it, ever. I don't ever say that because there's nothing for you to get over. But at what point in time are you going to process getting through? Because you can get through that. At what point in time are you going to stop blaming, your mom or your dad when in a lot of cases they have afforded you so much more than they had? You have so much more access than they had. So what is it that you're really asking for? What is it that you really want? Are you really angry at your parents or your caregivers? Or are you angry at yourself? Is it you? Is what's missing something that they didn't give you or something that you're not willing to work for to give yourself? So that
I
was
could just I can just feel the shift when you said that, because it's hard to shift from get over to get through. And a lot of times we may feel like we're owed something.
correct. Entitlement is what it's called, I believe.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think to get to a maturity and a point where you can honestly realize that no one owes you anything, that takes a lot of work, especially if, let's say, on a scale of 1 to 10, you feel like maybe your parents were a 3 or a 4, but that's based off of maybe what you saw other individuals got.
Mhm.
So to have to rationalize and sit with, okay, this is all I got. This is all I'm going to ever get. And now it's up to me. That's a lot.
Now what?
Mm, I
I
hate
have
that
a
question.
sign in my office that I often pull out for some of my clients that appear to be stuck. I show them this sign and there are two arrows. There's an arrow that points to yesterday, and there's an arrow that points to tomorrow. And I often say to them, when you look at the yesterday arrow, that's usually where depression lies. Sometimes people that are living in woulda, coulda, shoulda. You're living in the past. Things are, they've already happened. You can't do anything about them. I say to people often, life does not work in reverse. If it did, we'd be in trouble because some of us would never get out of reverse to go forward. We would just stay stuck. And when you look at the arrow that says yesterday, I'm sorry, tomorrow, that's where anxiety lies. We're contemplating, we're anticipating, what's going to happen and what's going to be the outcome and can I make it and can I do it and am I good enough? And it's difficult for you to survive in either one of those states, yesterday or tomorrow. All you really have is now. So I talk to my clients a lot about the present, living in the here and now. Now what? When something happens and things don't go your way, now what? What are you going to do? Do you just sit there and, you know, cry over spilled milk and, decide that you're going to have a hissy fit and you're not going to go forward? Or do you sit there and, gather yourself and see what it is and then say, now what? Now what? What are you going to do? Where are you going?
That question can feel like an attack
It
for
can.
someone who has just taken a step to get emotionally naked with someone for the first time, and they've been
Mhm,
carrying all this baggage, and they come in and they say, well, I should have got this and this happened and that, and they unload all of this,
mhm,
and you allow them to make their offering,
mhm.
and you come back to them and say, now what? That means, okay, I hear you, I acknowledge it, I'm validating that it was hard, all the things. What are you going to do now? And that means that you have to look to tomorrow instead of yesterday,
Well,
and that requires action.
it does. I mean, you don't have to. You can sit and not do anything, and I allow my clients space to process, because I'll get people that'll come in and say, "You know what? You're the very first person that has actually listened to me. Let me speak and listen to me and let me get it all out." Because I think that it does need to be validated. It's not a, okay, let's move on, let's get with it. It's not that. It's expressing how you feel and how you have been affected. I think that's necessary for us to be able to do. But if your life is going to continue, the question does become, now what? You talked about learning new things, and I am a lifelong learner. I'm forever studying, or now that I'm a doctoral student, I doing research and asking questions about why. And I heard something recently that sort of fits well into our current discussion. There was an individual that talked about losing a child. And it was through, I believe, horrific means that this happened. And whoever was interviewing this person said to this person, how did you get through it? What did you do to just get to the other side? And the person said something that was so simple, but so profound. And it stuck with me. This individual said, I realized I had to let go of what if, and I had to embrace what is. You have to let go of what if. What if I had gotten a job? What if the relationship had worked? What if the stars aligned and I could do this, that, or the other? It's unfortunate, but that didn't happen. So in order for you to move forward, you gotta let it go. I'm not saying get over it. I'm not saying sweep it under the rug, but you at some point you have got, and if you want to change, you have to do something different. You can't continue to do the same thing you've been doing and get a different result. There's a name for that. So you've got to let it go. And as painful as it is, you cannot hold on to it and move forward. When we do that in life, in relationships, we tend to not have a good outcome, going forward. I believe there's a spiritual writer, and his name was Richard Rohr, if memory serves me correctly. And he said something like, when you don't transform, what you don't transform, you transfer. When you don't process your trauma, when you don't process things that have happened to you, when you don't process, the way you're thinking, if it's dysfunctional, you simply transfer that forward. You transfer it to your relationships, transfer it, to everything literally that you engage in. So in order for you to not transfer, you have to transform. You have to be willing to become vulnerable. You have to be willing to sit with it, even though it's uncomfortable, and sort through it. And at the end of the day, you got to let go of some stuff. You got to let go of some things. You can't move forward. You and I both know people that are angry, people that that just spew venom, people that hurt other people. Hurting people hurt other people. We've heard that term used. A lot of that, I believe, is unprocessed trauma. It's pain that you're holding on to, and you wear that lens, and every you know every nail needs to be hit with a hammer. Okay, because that's all you know. And when you don't let go of that, when you don't process that, when you don't have a clear, safe space to release that, you simply transfer it to your relationships, to literally everything you do. And your life is permeated with it.
Something you mentioned about being stuck. You've often said to me in the past that we we can create a jail within our minds where we are the prisoner and the jailer and have the key.
Correct.
For someone who may just be starting or doesn't quite grasp that analogy, can you break that down?
Yes, I'll get individuals that will, that I will see, and there's all of these things. There's self-esteem issues, the fact that they don't know how to set boundaries, any number of things that are going on in their lives, and each of those things become a bar. Okay, and you literally create a private prison in your mind, and you are the jailer outside of the cell, and you are the prisoner sitting inside the cell. The keys to getting out of the cell are in the cell with you, but you won't let yourself out with the keys. And as the jailer, you won't unlock the cell from the outside to come out. And you stay stuck. You simply stay stuck there. And for you to get out, you've got to dismantle those bars. And those bars could be any number of things. Those bars are what's keeping you trapped. I don't feel good about myself. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. Anything that you can think of that can keep you in a trapped state, if you will, becomes a bar. And you're the only person that can dismantle those. I mean, as much as I want to say to you that, you are a phenomenal human being, you have value, you have self-worth. But if you don't believe that, me saying it, until are blue isn't going to make a difference. At some point, you have to believe that. You've got to be able to accept yourself for who you are. One of individual that I encountered on my journey said to me, "You never ever let somebody's opinion of you become your reality." And that has stuck with me. People will think and say whatever they think and say. It only becomes your reality if you believe that.
So true. There was another thing that you mentioned about stuckness and about growth and about a tree. Do you remember what that was?
You're not a tree, and you can change.
Mm.
Whatever it is you have the capacity and the ability to change. A tree is a
Yeah.
tree. If you plant a tree and you come back 100 years from now, that unless, the wind or whatever, life pushes it over or blows it down, it's still going to be in the same spot that you planted it. And guess what? It's still going to be a tree. That's not you. You don't have to be planted in one place and stuck there. You have the ability and the capacity to be able to move and be and make choices and do things. Trees don't have that ability. They're
Yeah.
just stuck right there being a tree.
Indeed. A lot of us, I think, are just starting to see and hear these new concepts because we grew up in a culture and time where therapy wasn't something that was talked about, especially for Black folks. Um, and for us, healing looked like being strong, keeping quiet, and pushing through. I wanted to ask you, how do you navigate that stigma and create space for others?
I normalize therapy. You go to the dentist for the mere fact that you want to have teeth. And there are things that you need to do in order to make that happen. If you have a heart condition, you seek the help of a cardiologist because that person is knowledgeable in how to keep your heart beating, if you will. So I say to individuals, how is it that this is normal? And the word normal can be relative. How is it that this is normal in every other aspect of your life, but when it comes to your mental health, we find, we it's you're stigmatized or you're stereotyped because of that. So in order to navigate it, I normalize it. It's just as normal, if you will, as anything else. It's a part of you. Your mental capacity is a part of who you are and needs to be taken care of just as other parts of your body, other parts of your life.
Sure. I think within our community, especially, um, Black women have had it difficult, not even just in our community, but just as a whole. They've been expected to be the backbone, the caretakers, and the ones who hold it all together. How do you shift the conversation from just being strong to actually being supported?
We need to stop celebrating exhaustion.
Mm.
Being strong means getting support. Being supported is being strong. Knowing when you need help is a sign of strength and resilience. We're not designed as beings to be, totally alone and by ourselves and, totally independent. It's okay to need help and get supported and to get the support that you need. This There's no crown or label for, working your fingers to the bone until you're exhausted and you can't see straight. You don't get rewarded for that. You get buried.
Mm. Wow, that's so true. And I think that it's just for so long, we have celebrated carrying as much as you can
Hmm.
without resting and being the one who has it all together.
Hmm.
And it might just take somebody to come by and just softly blow on you, and that all togetherness is gone because it's a house of cards.
Absolutely. And you've been patching it together with spit and bubble gum, and now it's coming apart. And that happens often. And it's frightening to people that have been those individuals that have been the backbone and the strength of everything, carrying the load and the weight of everybody's issues, not taking time for themselves, not getting rest, the rest or relaxation, the rejuvenation that they need. You cannot pour from an empty cup. We hear that often, and some of us still have not gotten that. You can't give what you don't have. So getting the support that you need, recognizing your limits, setting boundaries, saying no, learning to say no, all of that is a part of supporting yourself and getting the support that you need from those around you that care about you.
Yeah. I remember hearing you say once, "No," with a period is a complete sentence.
Absolutely. Yes, it is. It's a complete no, but no, no with a period is a complete sentence. And it's okay for you to say no. No doesn't mean that I don't like you. No means that right now that doesn't work for me. But we are so people know us, I think, better than we know ourselves. So when you're asked to do something or someone is asking you to be a part of something or to do something and you say no, the people that really know you at your core will sit for a second and not say anything. Complete silence. And you'll come back, well, let me see. I'll let me see if I can. And they knew that you were going to do that. They knew that you were going to say that. But it's okay for you to say no. No, people don't die because you say no. That's learning to set a boundary. That's the beginning of health, of being healthy and healing. Saying no.
Mm, it's so true. I think that every therapist has their own way of guiding people through change. When you think about the clients you've worked with, the ones carrying trauma, shame, responsibility, and years of silence, how do you walk with someone from survival into healing?
By first listening. I do a lot of listening. I allow them to express themselves. And as I said before, sometimes individuals will, in my office will say to me, you're the first person that's ever asked me what I thought or how I felt. They've never been asked that. So making sure that I provide a safe space for them to be able to express themselves, assuring them of the confidentiality of what they say to me, in this setting. Um, Allowing them to peel back the layers, if you will, and let's get to the core of where your feelings or your behaviors or a lot of what's coming out of you, where is that coming from? A lot of times it's coming from a place of survival. I did this when I was a child because I had to. This is how I survived. This is how I was able to hold it all together. And saying to them, that's okay. And healing a lot of the hurt that they have suffered, a lot of the trauma, n- just dealing with it and dealing with it in a way not to re-traumatize, but in a way so that they can accept the fact that that happened to me. That's not who I am. It's a lot of experiences that we have. And if you could just make that mental shift that, yes, that was real. I experienced it. I went through it, but that is not who I am. I am not a victim. I am a survivor. And the fact that you are here, the fact that you're present, the fact that you're sitting here with me tells me that you are a survivor. You might not know how you got here, and that's okay for right now, but you are a survivor because you're here. And if you're here, there's hope.
Mm, that was lovely. If you could be known for one thing when it's all said and done that would define your legacy, what would you want that to be?
I am a servant first and foremost. Um, I feel like this is my calling. This is what I was put on the earth to do. As children, we grow up and say, well, I want to be a teacher. I want to be a policeman. I want to be a fireman. I want to be a this or that. This is not what I wanted to be. I didn't say I wanted to be this. I always knew that I wanted to be in the helping profession. I always knew that I was the person that I wanted to root for the underdog. Always. I've always known that about myself. I've always been caring and compassionate. For a time in my life, I was a people pleaser. I wanted to be liked. I wanted to be validated, if you will. But I've learned to check that, if you will, and realize that we are more alike than we are different, I think. It's my opinion. And I want to help individuals see themselves for who they are and what they can be. That's my greatest aspiration, is to help somebody see their value, see their self-worth, soar. Help somebody see themselves doing something that they never, ever thought that they would be able to do, or help them get in touch with their true feelings. Because I think all of us are special. All of us have value. All of us have something to offer. All of us are on this planet for a reason. My goal is to help you find your purpose. Why are you here? Why were you born? Why do you do what you do? What makes you who you are? And I think when when as individuals, when we learn that, that's when we come into our own. That's when you do what you do with what seems like a not a lot of effort. That's when you become your best authentic self. That's what I want to do. I want to help individuals find their true authenticity, if you will.
Thank you so much for doing what you do and for contributing to making the world a better place. I mean, because I think anybody who sits across from you in your office can leave a little bit better each visit. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. And that's my hope, my prayer, my desire is to have you be different when when you leave my presence, when we finally go our separate ways. I want to have deposited something, contributed something to you that will make you a better person and that you can share with the world. That's what it's all about. We all stand on somebody else's shoulders. No man is an island. You
Mhm.
don't do what you do and get where you get all by yourself. You stand on somebody's shoulders. I've stood on a lot of shoulders to be where I am now. My goal is just to be worthy.
Mhm.
Just be
Thank you for
worthy.
that. All right, last question for you. If you could use your platform to educate anyone who might be struggling with their mental or emotional health and might be uncertain of how or where to start, what would you say?
Start at the beginning. Find somebody, not necessarily somebody, find a qualified individual that you can share with, that you can open up to. Granted, when you start therapy, you may encounter therapists that, there's just no connection. There's just no gelling. 90% of this is relationship. My being able to connect with you in a very, very short period of time, get you to trust me, um, create a space so that you are comfortable. I don't know you, you don't know me. People come in and I'm the first person that they have shared a lot of things with, that they have ever told about whatever that happened to them. That takes courage. That's not an easy thing to do. So you may have to cycle through, some people before you get to somebody that is compassionate, somebody that is willing to allow you to open up and be vulnerable without blaming, shaming, guilt tripping, gaslighting, without telling you what you should do. And I don't tell my clients what they should or shouldn't do. Okay? I challenge your thinking. You're the driver. I'm your guardrail. I keep you from running off the road and crashing. Okay. If you decide to do that, let's talk about what the consequences are of your doing that. Is that really what you want to do? All of that depends on the outcome that you want. So I handhold sometimes, but literally I'm your companion. I go along with you. I'm in lockstep with you about where you want to go. What do you want to do? What does that look like? And I'm your greatest cheerleader, because when you walk through my door, before anything else, I believe that you have the ability and the capacity to be whoever you want to be, to do whatever you feel like you want to do. I believe that for you. Sometimes I believe it and you don't. But in order for you to make progress, you've got to believe that. So I simply try and set the stage for you to be able to, if you will, grow into that.
Wise words. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this. It's an honor for me to have you as a guest and to allow you to share who you are and what you do. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
If people want to find you online, where can they find you?
At my website, JanieRhone.com.
All right. I'll be sure to put that in the show notes too. Well, again, Miss Janie, thank you so much for this. Thank you for your courage, for your knowledge. Thank you for doing the work that you did to be able to be here and help others to see who they are and get to a place of authenticity. Again, it's been an honor for me. I'm so happy to be able to share you to the world. So thank you for being a guest. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for what you do. And thank you for how you do it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, and I wish you the very best.